Looks like we're on. Oh, I don't have the clicker. Okay, apologies everyone. We're running a little late. We ran into a bit of an issue with my video. Let us see if at least we can get my slides up. Is there any way you guys can put them here too? So I'm Mike Pickering. Oh, we got them. Mike Pickering, founder of CloudConstable. A little bit about me. I have a technical background. So I'm not really the guy to be up on stage talking to you now, but I'll do my best. My current customer, my reference customer is a museum, and I'm wondering, by show of hands, is there anyone in the audience in the museums and culture sector? 1, 2. Well, thank you so much for hanging in kind of late on the last day of the conference. I appreciate that you're with us. So my project started out actually it's a long story, but let's say a Department of Defense project that involved building avatars to work on robots. And we actually have the avatar working not on robots, just on a display. So the idea is it's a little bit like the metaverse, bringing the metaverse to a screen near you. And the idea is we'll bring an animated AI-powered character like an avatar, but instead of being driven by a person, it's driven by AI. And that character can interact with and serve your customers. So I do have a bit of a case study from a museum customer that I wanted to talk about, and if they do get the video done, we'll be able to show it. Otherwise, I'll try to talk through it, and then we'll get through some more slides. By the way, I'm happy to take questions at any point, so if you have a question, do feel free to raise your hand. So this is one of the versions of the character. In this case, you'll see the shape of the screen, or if you imagine that the character beside the text is on a screen, it's portrait mode. So people tend to be, taller than they are wide, hopefully. I know I am. Getting a little bit more wide than tall, perhaps, but we all start out that way. And the idea was, well, if we're going to interact with a character in a natural way, let's try to build a character on a screen that looks more like a human and is shaped more like a human. And that's a good way of doing it. The character can see you, so the screen includes also some sensors. The character can see that someone's in front of them and make virtual eye contact with them. And we know when to sort of smile and greet you and say, welcome to my venue. However, the latest iteration of our technology actually has moved more to a landscape display, because we realize not only do we want to be able to present the animated character to help people, but also we want to be able to share content. And that's especially, I think, important for museums, because you have a lot of content that you might need to share. You can share stuff about what's in your collection, and how to get around the museum, what's happening, and all kinds of interesting stuff like that. We'll get into that in a little bit more detail. So the landscape layout has been, not everybody thinks it's quite that exciting, I guess, but Mirko here from the Canadian delegation is really happy to see his content page beside a sort of Miami version of the Ava character. And the idea in this case is, as I mentioned, the character's on one side. She can guide you and answer questions and talk with the visitors or any kind of customer, while you can also show content in the other pane. In this case, we've got the Canadian delegation. There's about 15 to 20 of us who came to the Filmgate Festival first and Immerse Global Summit here in Miami. Marco's one of the other delegates, and we set everybody up with their own page in the book. So we want to make it useful as well as fun. And you see there's a QR code so that you can scan the QR code and go to a book a meeting with me page. And we're supporting that through this application as well. Of course, we have lots of different ways you can customize the character. We haven't got any NFTs that we offer yet, but different outfits and of course logos and branding are an important aspect of the offering. This is where we might have a video. So, any chance the video might work? And it's my fault, I gave them a weird format. And I thought it was a standard one that Windows knew, but it seems like maybe not. You got it? Soon they will have it. So I'm gonna fill in some space a little bit. Maybe this might be a good time to take any questions if there are any so far. Any questions at all? One question, please. So the question is, it's a web-based experience, and I've repeated the question, so you don't need to run. But since you're there, do you want the microphone? Do you want to repeat that for everyone?
Yeah, I just, yeah.
Yeah.
I just wondered if it was it's exclusively a web-based experience?
So it's not really even meant to be a web-based experience, actually. It's meant to be a screen-first kind of experience in person. So you're standing in front of a screen like one of these, and I should have explained that better. I apologize, and thank you for asking. The idea is you can install as many screens as you need in your venue, and people can just walk up to it and interact with it. You don't need to put on a headset. You don't need to put on anything special. You don't need to do anything special other than just stand there and talk and point. So there's a touch screen part of it as well. You can interact with the book that way. On-site, definitely, yes. In the real world. In the real world. Okay, we're ready with the video.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Neal-Blowers, Executive Director of the Ontario Regiment RCAC Museum in Oshawa. And this museum tells the story of our regiment, the Ontario Regiment, from the 19th century through the 20th century to the conflicts of today. So here we are in the lobby of the museum. This is the first interaction that visitors have with our institution. And as you can see, we have our venue AI behind me that we call Master Corporal Lana. So Master Corporal Lana will welcome guests. She can answer questions about the museum. She has some virtual exhibits. People can see some things that are behind the scenes that they can't see because they're no longer on display. And just generally assist the visitor during their time here. Other venues, museums, cultural institutions can utilize this technology in a very similar way to highlight their exhibits, to help guide visitors through their museum and through their exhibits, and also to answer frequently asked questions about the museum, its operations, and its collections. So here we are in the Military Vehicle Conservation Center, which is a key component of our museum. And as you can see, it contains very large artifacts. This is actually living history. People come to our museum at special times throughout the year, not just to see these vehicles as you see them here in the museum, but to experience living history as they're demonstrated in the tank arena. So in the museum, visitors can get up close to these large military vehicle artifacts. We also have paneling that tells people about their history and a little bit about the vehicle. However, with our venue AI, visitors can learn more. Interactive exhibits about the vehicle, get a look inside the vehicle, and also get videos and rich content about the vehicles in our collection when they're not running on our event days. We hope you get the opportunity to visit our museum sometime in the future, have a look at these artifacts, these amazing pieces of military history, and interact with Master Corporal Lana so that you can learn more.
Excellent. You guys in the back, you rock. Thanks so much. So I'm trying to put this in context a little bit. Not everybody has been to a military museum. I know it's not everyone's thing. This one is a pretty cool place, and I think quite interesting because of the fact that they have this large collection of vehicles that actually drive around. But they have, as I'm talking about, they have about 120 vehicles in their collection. They also have about 6,000 artifacts, and not everything is out and on display at the same time. Some of the vehicles might be under restoration, for example. And of course, a lot of the artifacts, they don't even have space to show them. In terms of visitors, they have about 15,000 before the pandemic. They have about 20,000 square feet of exhibit and vehicle display space, 178 active volunteers, and they really depend on the volunteers because they only have 3 full-time staff. So how does this compare with other museums that we might know about out there in the world? I wanted to use the Louvre as an example. I was there about a year ago myself. And the Louvre, of course, is one of the most famous museums in the world. They have about 500,000 artifacts. About 35,000 of those are on public display. They have one 30-inch by 24-inch painting. Does anyone know it? Has anyone seen it? Yeah? The Mona Lisa. It's a very famous painting, apparently valued, they say, the highest valuation of any art object in the world, valued in today's, or roughly today's dollars, at about 870 million, or it's insured for that. The Louvre is a very large museum as well. They get about 2.8 million visitors a year. They have 650,000 square feet of space in a palace. The palace itself, the museum, should be in a museum. And it's been operating as a museum for 200 years. They have 2,000 staff. Still, there are a lot of parallels between the Louvre and the Tank Museum, the one that we were talking about before, because the Louvre Museum as well, even though they have a large collection, not all of it is on display at the same time. And in fact, typically only a small fraction is on display at a given time. They really rely a lot on staff and a lot of volunteers as well to make their museum work. And actually, if you're walking around in the museum, which I did about a year ago, you find there's a lot to see. It's a huge area, and it's a little bit hard to know where to go to see what you want to see. And there's not a lot of staff actually available to guide you and give you information about what you're seeing. Part of that is because a lot of their staff are needed at the front door. They get so many visitors in through the front door that it takes a lot of staff just to serve people at the front door once you get in. How are we doing on time? 6 minutes. Okay. So let me pause to see if there are any questions. Any other questions at all? All right, I'm talking about museums. I'm putting everybody to sleep, I guess. That's the way it goes. So another museum you might know about a little bit closer to where we are now, the Smithsonian Institute, which is by many measures the largest museum in the world, of course. 157 million artifacts. That's 157 million. That's not a misprint. They really have that many things at the Smithsonian. Now, of those, of course, only about 35,000 are on public display. I think that number might be wrong. It might be more than that, because they do have a large museum, a lot of different buildings. There's the Star-Spangled Banner, the 200-year-old flag, of course, is there in one of the museums. One Apollo 11 lunar lander is there. Not one, I think it's one that actually went to the moon. And of course, admission is free at this museum. So they get 13.7 million visitors in total already up till now, as far as I know. And they actually have 21 distinct museums, different buildings, spread over a wide area, mostly on the mall, of course, but there's other facilities outside of that. And they have a zoo, and it's all been overall been in operation for about 175 years. But in total, they have over 12 million square feet of facilities. They have 6,000 staff and 2,700 on-site volunteers, but it's the same situation as you might find at a Tank Museum or the Louvre Museum. Again, not all their artifacts are out on display, and even though at the Smithsonian you can get in for free, so the the number of staff that are needed to help get people in is less. It's still such a large space, and they have so much going on, so much to do, that it can still be hard to find your way around, especially, you know, we've got 21 museums. Geez, I want to see the Star-Spangled Banner. That sounds cool. Where do I go? Which one of the museums is that in? So it is the kind of thing that a character like Ava can help you with. Question?
It will make museums more accessible. What's next?
So I think that really is the heart of the question, right? Can this technology make museums more accessible? And I do think there's a couple of ways that it can. So one thing is, as of now, at my relatively small museum customer in Canada, we only have my solution speaking English so far. But of course, there's lots of other languages in the world, and that's one of the key things, like especially larger museums, they'll have people visiting from all over the world, and they'll be speaking all kinds of different languages. Some of them might even speak sign language. So shouldn't we have a good way to serve those customers in their own native language? I think so, absolutely. And moreover, I think there need to be as many possible ways to get information and learn about the museum and about, because, you know, people go to museums because they're interested in stuff, presumably the kind of stuff that you can find in the museum. And I think, while it is really cool to go to a museum and see stuff and see, you know, the 200-year-old Star-Spangled Banner flag, or whatever it is that you're interested in, the Mona Lisa at the Louvre, it's also kind of cool to know a little bit more about the backstory. And if you're interested in, you know, science and you want to know how stuff works, or if you're interested in art and you want to know, like, what was going through the painter's mind when he painted a certain painting or made a certain sculpture, how do they do it? What other contemporaries do they have? Like, there's a lot of other information that I think is made accessible through this kind of technology. Any other questions? All right. Okay. Let's have another question.
So my question is, I do want to expand upon the individual who said about languages, when you were talking about languages. So are you talking about, can you expand upon the language aspects of individuals with disabilities? Maybe they have visual nuances or auditory nuances that maybe need additional assistive technology. Is that something that you have thought about incorporating, not only just different languages, but how we can make languages accessible?
I have thought about it. I have to admit, I don't have a complete answer, but I'm very much interested in doing all we can to help use this technology to make solutions and museums more accessible. I do think there's a great opportunity to do things like have, you know, closed captioning equivalent information available, and have the ability to hear what you're seeing told to you as well and explained, if that is something that would be helpful. I think we have to also be a little bit cognitive of the fact that not everybody likes to kind of be bombarded with information. You might need to tune it down, or turn it down a little bit, if you want to say it that way. And I think we need to make sure that we can do that by all means. Anything that we can do, we should do. Were there any other questions? Yes.
I came in super late. Is there a way to get a slide deck? Because this is fascinating.
You know, it's Miami, right? I understand. Were you at the beach? I wouldn't blame you if you were. I was there earlier, actually.
I thought that Miami dresses like this.
Yeah, I know. Why not, right? It's Miami. So yeah, I'm happy to share the slides with you at the end. Just ping me. We'll set something up. Okay, so I think this is my last slide that I really wanted to talk about before we wrap up. So how can a nonprofit afford AVA? Of course, a lot of museums are nonprofits of some kind or another, or they have a foundation or something that is a nonprofit. And there are credits available from Microsoft that we can help people or help museums and nonprofits apply for. Certainly any kind of funding that is available is always helpful in these kinds of scenarios. And my solution does require some Azure services, and for a smaller museum, the credits that are available could cover the whole annual operating cost for the solution. Now, of course, there are other pieces, but we'll help as much as we can. So I think my time is about up. Are there any other questions? So I don't see any. All right, well, thank you all for coming, and thank you for your questions. I had a great time talking with you. Enjoy Miami. Thank you again.